Good afternoon, and happy Saturday. Welcome to this special edition of When Life Needs a Detox, entitled Racism and History, Myth Busting and Truth Telling. I am so glad that you have been able to spend some time with me today. I am always glad to see you. This series is going to run for the month of February, every Saturday at 2 p.m. We're going to be talking about Black history, racism, and the myths that go along with it. Some that we've bought into, some that we don't believe, but I think all of them need to be talked about. As a matter of fact, I'm going to get started because it's 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon and I know people have things to do. The myth we want to talk about today is, did Blacks really fight for the Confederacy in the Civil War? I know it's a strange topic, but you'll understand as we go along. This is the myth. Blacks, slaves, fought for the Confederacy during the Civil War. Truth. This would have been an impossibility. I'll tell you why. And I'll also tell you why I got on this topic. Last weekend, I watched a movie called Burden on Showtime. It was not a particularly great movie, although I do recommend it because it is based on fact, and I just happen to personally like a come to Jesus moment type of film. But there was one scene in this movie where the KKK leader, who was attempting to open a KKK museum in the town of Lawrence, South Carolina, said that Blacks would be welcomed at the museum because Blacks did fight for the Confederacy and Blacks should know their true history. It occurred to me at that moment that this could truly be a widely held belief among some people, and that this might be taken for truth at face value. So I did some research. My research revealed several things. First, if a slave was anywhere near the Confederacy side of the Civil War, it was in his given capacity, a slave. They did the hard labor, building bridges, digging latrines, clearing fields, cooking, what have you. Realistically, it's not as if they had a say-so as to their being there. Slaves go where they are told to go, and slaves do what they are told to do. Second, slaves were not legally allowed to own firearms. This had been the case since the end of the Bacon Rebellion in 1676. The gentry elite, or rather the English royalty, wanted to eliminate any possibility of African slaves and white European indentured servants ever again banding together in rebellion. So they enacted a set of laws that created a separation between the indentured servants and the African slaves. Now, this separation between the white European indentured servant and the African slave was called an Act Concerning Servants and Slaves, which was later renamed the Virginia Slave Codes of 1705. Among these laws was the law that prohibited Africans, free or slave, to possess or own firearms. Now, it's covered in Article 35 of the Virginia Slave Codes. I'm not going to read all of it. It's a little long, but it starts out like this. And also be it enacted by the authority aforesaid, and it is hereby enacted. They were really long-winded. that no slave go armed with a gun, sword, club, staff, or other weapon. No, go from the plantation and seat of land where such slave shall be appointed to live, without a certificate of leave in writing, for so doing, from his or her master, mistress, or overseer. And if any slave shall be found offending herein, it shall be lawful for any person or persons to apprehend and deliver such slave to the next constable or head borough, who is hereby enjoined and required without further order or warrant to give such slave 20 lashes on his or her bare back, well laid on, and send him or her home. There's more. There's more. There's the penalties that go along with this. There are more penalties. And all the horses, cattle, and hogs now belonging or hereafter shall belong to any slave, or of any slave's mark in this Her Majesty's colony or dominion, because remember, they were still under the rule of England, shall be seized and sold by the church wardens of the parish. Herein such horses, cattle, or hogs shall be, and the profit thereof applied to the use of the poor of the said parish. And also any damage shall be hereafter committed by any slave living at a quarter where there is no Christian overseer. The master or owner of such slave shall be liable to action for trespass and damage, as if the same had been done by him or herself. I told you it was long. Now, this law was to ensure that slaves did not have access to anything that could cause bodily or mortal harm to the slave owners. Now, the third, and possibly the most important point of all, as to why slaves could not have fought in the Confederacy, it was illegal for slaves or black freedmen to harm white people of any status in the antebellum South. It was illegal to harm white folks. A slave causing harm to a white man was subject to beatings and or death. Moreover, this punishment could be administered by any white man or men, not just the owner of the slave. Do you really think these men were going to freely give a slave a loaded weapon to use against white men? And it is illegal for them to do so? Now, just based on these three facts, I submit that there is no way that there was any slave fighting for the Confederacy during the Civil War. Slaves didn't have a choice. It's not like they chose to do it. They could not own or possess firearms, and they were not allowed to harm white folks. So how exactly did they fight for the Confederacy in the Civil War? They didn't. That myth has now been debunked. Tell a friend. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's really all I have for today. I have enjoyed spending time with you on this Saturday, and we will do it again next Saturday. I love you guys to the moon and back. Stay safe, wear your masks, wash your hands, and stay informed about who you are, what you are, and why you are. I'll see you again next Saturday. Bye-bye now.